Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the February 1st edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are watching on Instagram right now. I definitely encourage you to head on over to the YouTube channel or Facebook, but preferably YouTube, so you can get the full effect, so you can see all the work that I put in during the pandemic to learn about how to run my own show. All right, do me that solid. Definitely appreciate you. Props to those who are watching on Facebook Live. Make sure you hit the share button so your friends can see what's being put down tonight. And last but not least, definitely those of you who are tuned in on YouTube. If you're new to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I'm never going to monetize off it. That's not my calling. I accept it. But it makes me feel good when it says in my email, you have a new subscriber. As long as it's not spam. So as long as you're not spam, I'll feel good about the entire thing. So with this episode, I wanted to make sure I got back this week because last week I got hit with a crazy stomach flu. I'm not going to say I've probably been the most sick within the last 3 years than I've been in my entire life, but I've been sick these last 3 years, especially this last year. And I know some people are going to attribute it to the jab. I got the jab multiple times. I'm feeling all right. Hopefully my life expectancy surpasses 67, 68 years of age, right? Hopefully I make it past that, which is the life expectancy for a black man here in Philadelphia and in America in general. So hopefully a couple years don't get knocked off of that because of the jab. But if it does, then that's the game. That's just the game. So it is Black History Month, and nothing says Black History like that beep that you just heard, which signifies what? I need to change the battery in my smoke detector. But we all know that we will not. Because we might get concerned if we stop hearing the beep. Because the beep signifies what? That at least it's working. The battery might be low, but it is operable. So shout out to, I don't know who made the smoke detector. I'm sure, hopefully it was a Negro. I need to do my research to find out. And if it's not, it probably was our idea because we know how they be taking our. With that said, this is I'm not going to say it's a special episode, but it's an episode that I haven't done in a while where I am going to be replaying a conversation that has taken place prior to. Normally, for those who watch me on Rhetorically Speaking, you know it's live and in living color. Anything goes. I may mess up. I may not. I may start making jokes. I may go off on tangents. I'm not editing anything because I don't get paid enough to edit this. And I don't pay myself. So I'm not going to edit this video. But the video that will be shown after I do this brief intro was a conversation that I had with my good friend, Dr. Chanda Reynolds, also known as Paging Dr. Shan. Make sure you go and follow her on all the socials and also check out the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast that is on all of your streaming platforms. We had a conversation last Friday. I don't know the date. I'm trying to erase that day from my memory because that is the day that the Tyre Nichols video. Matter of fact, let's change this because it's important. The language that we use is important when we're describing things, whether it's this, whether it's sexual assault. Tyre Nichols isn't the focus. The focus should be on the Memphis 5, the Memphis police officers who brutally assaulted Tyre Nichols, which led to his death. Subsequently, they murdered the man. But how we set things up in conversations, in sentences, can impact what we focus on. And so by me starting with the Tyre Nichols video, that does what? That takes the onus off these 5 officers. This takes the onus off police. This takes the onus off systemic racism. So let's start over. Welcome to Rhetorically Speaking. Last Friday, I had an amazing conversation with Dr. Chanda Reynolds in the aftermath of the video release, which showed 5 Memphis police officers. No, scratch that. At least 10 to 12 Memphis police officers be complicit. Some who used physical force that brutalized Tyre Nichols. Some who were equally as complicit because they were bystanders watching this take place. The video release of his assault, which led to his death, came out. And it was important for me to have a conversation in the immediate aftermath of the video because, of course, mental health is something that many of you know me for. But also being able to have critical conversations. And so this was an opportunity to merge the two. So we could potentially process this collective grief that so many of us are experiencing because we made the decision to watch the video, like myself, which you'll hear me talk about in this IG live video that Dr. Chanda and I did. It felt nasty. I'll say that right now too. It felt nasty anticipating the release of a video of police brutalizing a black man and subsequently brutalizing a black community because of the secondary trauma associated with it. But I'll let you watch the rest of that. Here we are 5 days later since the video release. The 5 cops have been charged with, I believe, second-degree murder. They subsequently, I believe, all of them have been bonded out. That tells you a lot that we need to know about this system. Since the video release, a white officer who hit Tyre Nichols in the initial traffic stop pepper sprayed him and then made heinous comments. Or maybe he was forecasting what was to come when he was saying, I hope they stomp the shit out of him. I hope they stomp the shit out of him. Which happened. He was fired from his job. 5 days later, I've had an opportunity to sit and reflect on the entire process, on everything that's taken place, on how I now feel psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, how my quad feels. I'm able to look objectively at the community's response from day 1 to now day 5. I feel good about how I'm feeling regarding my ability to process what took place. Given the work that I do, Tyre Nichols is never far from my mind. Much like any of the now ancestors that we've lost as a result of police violence, of systemic racism. But what I noticed is interesting is that as a collective, we've seen to have moved past the video. We've moved past the moment. And that's not atypical because we've moved past George Floyd. We've moved past Sandra Bland. We've moved past Ahmaud Arbery. Insert name here, insert name here, insert name here. This is what we do. But it just seems stark when there's a stark contrast when I think about the George Floyds and the Breonna Taylors, and outside of the fact that those took place in a pandemic, which means a lot. But just to see what the conversations have turned to, those who were lamenting the police on Friday were now screaming in excitement for the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. It's interesting. Systemic racism involved in both areas. In the legal system, in corporate America, in the NFL in particular. Then I see that y'all homegirl in the Beehive, hopefully the Beehive don't come after me. I'm not interested enough for them to put bees in my comment section. But apparently Billionaire B released her tour schedule. And I saw folk posting $1,000 ticket prices, wondering aloud if they should go. They have supplanted the Tyre Nichols conversation. And it's not to say that black folk can't have joy. But I think this is why, one of the reasons why so many of us, including myself, we look at the activism of yesteryear as being, how can I put this without minimizing the work that's being done today? But we look at it with such reverence. We look at the capacity of the ancestors to truly come together. And again, it's not all, right? Because we're not a monolith. But to come together for at least longer than 24 hours. And I'm complicit in this as well. But with that said, those were my observations in the 5 days past. We passed Tyre Nichols. We waited for the next video to come out of the black brother, black sister. But it has to be a black brother, primarily because we know black sister don't get that same kind of pub. And we know that it has to be white cops who are perpetrators of this crime. Because otherwise we'll do what? A little squeamish to talk about. Not recognize that they represent a system. So with that said, because I felt like I didn't talk more than I needed to, here's the conversation with Dr. Shan and myself.
It's interesting, just like what our reaction is to things, right? Like my response, I talked about it. I made like several posts regarding the dropping of the video, right? And I'm like, damn, why am I anticipating this? It's something that it felt nasty, right? It felt nasty. And so and not to say you should feel that way about trying to use the content in some capacity, but it's just like, where are we as a society where we look at the murder of a black man on film and our response and how we can not be in the moment, right? And try to take that moment much further, which I guess it can be a noble thing, but also like I've seen people like podcast folk with like a countdown till they start their conversation on it. And it's like, maybe I'm no different, right? Maybe I'm no different with having this moment right here, but it's more so something I felt compelled to do because I'm not going to be out there in the streets, not tonight. So it's just like, how can I hold space for people in an authentic way for everything that's just transpired within the last hour and the anticipatory grief of even the release of the video?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like, me personally, there are multiple ways you can hold that space. Because like you got more than Instagram who listens to you and follows you. Phil, like you got people on Facebook, you got a whole like, radio things and stuff that you're doing. So I don't know. I feel like, and not even necessarily talking about the traumatic situation that people just experience, but more so like how we're processing it, validating feelings, and providing resources. Because that should be the goal, as opposed to, because the podcast community, and I'm a part of it, but it's going to be gossip related to it. It's going to be the clickbait stuff. But as clinicians, I feel like, of course, we have a responsibility to show up differently in situations like that.
And that's a whole nother conversation in itself, right? Like, how are we showing up in the social media space just in general, right? Yeah. But then as far as just how we're navigating situations like this, where we watch a black man. I don't know why you watched the video. Probably I have no idea why I watched the video, but we watched the video and we see a black man get I don't even know the words to describe the violence that he was exposed to, whether he was under the influence or not, right? It was more so just the violence that we've become accustomed, and that we should be accustomed to experiencing by the police, formerly slave catchers. So this is just a long lineage of the pain and the violence and the destruction and devastation caused by this sect of people.
Yeah, and it's really devastating to watch, because you're absolutely right? So like, of course, policing is rooted in like the slave patrol, whatever, which was started in like near the 1700s or whatever. But to see like black men doing that, right? It's like, for me personally, I felt such conflicting emotions watching this, and I don't know why I watched it like you, but I felt such conflicting emotions, because on the one hand, I'm feeling emotions related to, Tyre Nichols, feeling angry, feeling sad, I'm still shaking from watching the video, but then I experienced like a different type of reaction after hearing what like the reporters were saying about the police officers, because like just now there was a white reporter referring to them as thugs, saying that this is how people act when they're thugs attacking people, right? And my initial reaction is, whoa, why is he calling these black men, the police officers, thugs, when in reality, like, it's like I don't know how to make sense of the conflicting emotions that I'm personally experiencing. So it was a lot. Very heavy.
Yeah. When you're saying they're referring to them as thugs, I put that, something like that. It resonates to what I put socials yesterday. I said the 5 black cops from Memphis who allegedly killed Tyre Nichols about to get their Negro wake-up call. They're going to see that they're not white, not a cop, and definitely not a white cop. And I wasn't surprised. Just the experience in Philly and just Philly police in general, whether black or white or any other ethnicity / gender. The response is typically one with aggression, a lot of force, lack of attempts to de-escalate, and that's been my experience personally, as well as what I've seen. So for them to plaster the 5 black guys, it was just like, I just saw blue. Because I think I don't think, just like I don't believe any black man, black woman, black non-binary person belongs in the white man's army, right? Like the Black Panther said, they don't belong in the white man's police department, right? And there's a part of yourself that you have to ignore. You have to willfully ignore in order to participate in that job, right? There's no such thing as a good cop. When we consider what we just saw, not even the 5 that were violent towards Tyre, but also the 7 or 8 that were standing around just watching as he fell
Yeah.
on the ground repeatedly and then being sat up on the car. So yeah, I'm going to abolish the police, abolish the judicial system, all of it. I don't know what the proper recourse is, right? But I do know that there needs to be some type
Yeah.
of accountability for what we saw.
For sure, for sure. And even going back to your point of like the officers who just stood by and watched, you know, I know we often talk about like, you know, the political side of things, like, well, in order to be, you know, in this part of Congress or to be president or whatever, you have to be complacent with white supremacy in some ways. It's the same way with policing. And so I think we saw that manifested today, especially with the officers who just stood by and watched, who actually were, you know, facilitating the action, but also standing by and watching. Like, that's literally complacency. I don't know what other way to describe that.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's
Are you on your Wi-Fi?
Yeah. Mine's cool. Yours all right?
Mine is good. I got files.
I got
Yours
files.
You choppy.
So let me see. I had this issue. Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay, so it's
I
cool.
can hear you. I mean, you blurry, but I can hear you.
All right. No, I mean, I agree with the points that you made. You know, I think we automatically assumed, I could speak for me personally. I automatically assumed that it was 5 white people, right? Three, you know, at least 3 white people, 2 black people, 2 black persons. I was shocked, but again, and plus I watched First 48, I'm gonna be honest, right? I've watched First 48 multiple seasons, and you get a chance to you get a glimpse into these police departments, right? But once you know one police department, you know them all. But it was something especially egregious about Memphis, New Orleans, these hotbeds where black folk are the primary residents, right? You know, we tend to see, and it might be speaking anecdotally, you tend to see like the over policing, right? Even we see that here in Philadelphia with the militarization of police. So you'll see a high concentration of police in one area. You'll see a cop car stationed on a specific block for 24 hours, 7 days a week. So again, it's like the surprise, but I wasn't surprised as far as like a visceral reaction from me. I thought I was going to be like bawling. My mother called me this morning, and my mother never calls me about things like this, right? And she says she heard the mother's voice and him crying out, "Mom," you know, like he did numerous times. And she said she just wanted to make sure that I was okay. And that was the first time, right, that she's done that with regards to police videos specifically that gets broadcasted. And for me, as it was getting closer, I had to call my daughter, like, listen, don't watch this, right? It might come across your TikTok, it may come across your social media, your friends might send it in the group chat, but do not watch this. And this is one of the times I hope you trust me, you know, where I'm really leading you hopefully the right way by not exposing you to this type of trauma at such a young age, because it becomes continuous. It's why I'm numb in watching that video. It's hard. I hate to say, I was expecting a lot worse, which again is how we're conditioned. I heard as bad as Rodney King, and I remember seeing Rodney King, and I remember the verdict, seeing that in class. I remember the OJ verdict, seeing that in class. And so, dare I say, I was let down, which is problematic and highlights a desensitization from it, and highlights the impact of white supremacy and the influence that it has on, to where I was watching it on CNN and they were treating it like First Take with Stephen A. Smith, where they're sitting analyzing the video, going back and forth, have the commentators, and I'm like, is this football? Is this basketball, or is this we're watching the act of murder of a black man? I mean,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I'm glad. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm glad you named it like that, desensitization, because when we're, of course, like our history is traumatic in this country, right? So not only just like based on what we personally experience, but what our ancestors experienced. Like people don't realize like that's embedded in us. Like that's passed down transgenerationally, like biologically, right? So when we watch some of these things, like, yeah, there's systematic desensitization is real. So I might not have that same reaction as someone else who might be shocked or surprised that they're watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
Because this ain't our first time experiencing this. This generation,
Yeah.
this is what we've been through.
Especially that it's now on video and it gets circulated. I made a post today, and I'm gonna pull up whoever requested to go live. I don't have a problem with anybody coming on, expressing themselves. I posted about how, damn, what did I post about? I post so much stuff. I posted about how it is necessary that we share these videos. I know there's a segment of the world of people on social media who like do not show it, and I wholeheartedly feel for you. And if that's your truth, lean into your truth, right? I advocate for you not to watch it. But as we see, video wasn't enough for a long time. Like we can date back to times where we've seen things on video, but because it didn't have the traction from the people, the groundswell,
Right.
that it went no further. I think about Rodney King and how we watched him literally be kicked and punched for minute upon minute upon minute, and then how they were found not guilty. And again, there's a long history of this taking place. So now we're in this social media era where we're sharing it not only locally, nationally, but internationally as well. And we see the support that comes from this, where you have the president, you have the Senate, you have the police chief, you have all of these people doing preemptive strikes. Like, hey, this is terrible. We're going to handle this. Do I think they're doing that without the people and without it being shared on social media? I don't. Not to say that their statements mean anything, because we know that they're hollow, but ultimately I'm for sharing it. I won't share it myself, but I understand the need for it to be shared. So
Yeah. I guess like where I'm finding difficulty in, like, how do we find that balance then? Because I do feel like there's a significant level of gaslighting that Black people in this country experience when we talk about like racism, discrimination, especially when we live these experiences, right? So when we call the police and tell them about hate crimes or like, being targeted by police, when we talk about these things, we're often gaslit. So we need that video-based footage. We need witnesses. But on the other hand, like, I'm one of those people, I like watching stuff like that. Like it really triggers me. So I guess I'm wondering like where do we kind of like meet in the middle? Like how can we protect the mental health of Black people and also provide, video evidence in order to kind of support our statements and the experiences that we had?
Everything isn't for everybody. Like some people will have a strength. I realized, and I don't even know if it's a strength. So I don't even want to characterize it as that. I remember from my early days in social work, working in child welfare, and I would go out to hospitals and see kids beaten. I would interview sexual predators and was able to do it without my feelings being attached, right? And something like this, that may be a benefit, right? Where we do have the people who have the bandwidth, to have the ability for this fight, right? And so then we might have people on the back end, I don't even want to say the back end, who's right beside us, who's able to do something else, who's able to come up on the live afterwards, to hold space and say, let's have a conversation about what you might feeling if you heard the scuttlebutt about what's taking place. So I think a space for all.
Yeah.
We just have to know ourselves, and that goes back to what we always talked about, where we don't necessarily know ourselves to be able to recognize what we can and cannot handle and navigate because it's right in front of us. Because if that's the case, all of us would have been on hiatus from socials, right? Or many more than actually are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the problem is that awareness piece though that you brought up, like not knowing what our triggers are and not knowing how much we can take or not take. Because in that moment when I just watched, I told you I was watching it. I don't think I should have. I think I lacked self-awareness
Which
in
happens,
that moment.
right? Which happens because it's like you got me pressing you, like, yo, break the me, like you need to get on. I should have been like, and again, that's something for me to be mindful of as a friend, right? Like, nah, yo, I need you to get on, but don't watch it, right? Or wait till you get on and then tell you what I got you on about, as opposed to, so I'm not leading you to a place, because again, that's where we hold each other accountable. We do need to be one another's keeper in moments like this.
I agree. I want to hear their thoughts. What they thinking? Somebody was
Yo,
about to
Q,
join.
I don't know what happened to the sister. I watched Till the other day. I watched Till the other day and just cried hard simply for the fact his mom had the courage to show the world what happened to her son. Word. Have you now? That's something I won't do. Interesting, right? I watched this video on CNN, but I won't watch Till. I won't watch Emancipation. I won't watch those slave narrative films. Um, what do you think about that? The fact that I'll watch this, but I won't watch Till, insert slave narrative movie, black traumatic movie name here.
I was going to say it makes sense because we know those types of movies are often like not written by us. The money usually isn't going in our pocket, right? So of course we're helping, Hollywood and America capitalize off of our trauma. But watching like a real life situation would be different. But I also feel like they capitalize off of that too. Like do you think the views from this past hour on CNN, they stayed the same? No, they definitely went up. I'm pretty sure y'all are capitalizing off of this. I haven't seen what's his name? I haven't seen Don Lemon on CNN in a minute.
They rolled him back out, huh? They rolled the filthy Negro back out.
Yeah, like y'all are using this moment right now. Y'all are milking this, right? So I get it, but I think it's like two sides of the same coin for real.
Yeah, I can see that. It's the capitalizing off black pain is profitable in every aspect. We see CNN, we see the coverage, we see the police officers who are hired to police these black neighborhoods, who are trained to disproportionately engage with non-white persons, black folks specifically, so to bring them into court to try everything, right? The bail bondsmen and so forth and so forth. It's big business, right? The prisons, and so recognizing that, I always wonder, like how should I personally be responding? I question, like, is this enough? Is this form of, because I do think this is a form of activism. I do think this, we need black folk alive. We need black folk to think critically about situations that we find ourselves in. So this is a form of activism. But I often wonder, am I doing enough in moments like this?
I think we have to kind of understand our own capacity for stuff like that too, right? Because we're very much black as well. Like, we're experiencing these emotions too. So I know for a fact, like, if tomorrow wasn't Saturday and it was a weekday and I had clients lined up, I probably wouldn't be good to do a session tomorrow. And I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
But it's really about like recognizing the capacity that we have to hold space for other people while also allowing ourselves to experience and, you know, have these emotions ourselves.
I think for me, and you can speak for yourself, I think like this quest for Black liberation, I find myself energized for it. And so when there are moments like this, I think it's less of, do I have the bandwidth, but am I using my skill set to the best of my abilities? So it's sitting here talking and trying to get folk to think critically, not only about their wellness, but just critically in general. Is that enough? Or should I be out in the street? Should I be out leading the marches, and so again, this is something as I lean into my Blackness, right? The questions I've really start to ask myself, and this goes into that whole, Black liberation psychology, how we're going from one end of the spectrum to the opposite, to the others, where we're hyper focused on Black folk. And I think that's the space where I'm in now, where I'm hyper focused on Black folk. And then it's just like, okay, now what can I do to fully taking this emotion, this energy, and translating into something that's tangible that can be utilized for the cause.
Yeah. Darren said he wanted to join us live. Darren, come through. You only got to be on for a couple minutes if you got somewhere to go. But no, for real, what you're saying is valid. But I want to ask, like, you say you wonder if you're doing enough, but like, what does enough look like, and whose standard is that? Like, is that your personal standard, or could this be like maybe outside pressures, or you feel like people might be looking to you to do certain things, or like what would enough look like, and who was it?
I mean, the ancestors tell me enough, and that is not enough. And so when I go back and I read their stories, even contemporaries who are out literally doing the work, I often feel convicted about and I know you like that word. I often feel convicted about what am I out here doing. And so again, there continues to be a shift.
Yeah.
And the more I show myself grace and recognize I can't be them, right? I can't emulate them in certain ways, but I can if I'm working to capacity, if I'm raising healthy children and doing what I need to do for the people in any capacity, that's a win. But for me, again, it's just something I continuously navigate. The more I spend time in this sphere, as opposed the other. My my dissertation chair said Biden just posted a statement, and of course, I'm not going to be at residency tomorrow. I got to be with the people tomorrow. So this is notification I won't be in residency tomorrow, Steve. I'll email somebody. I don't care. When it comes to, again, just we see the especially I can't speak for Black women, and I'm gonna let you do that. But just those feelings when it comes to protection that Darren was talking about, and wanting to protect and feeling the need to protect. We know what we're going to see from. I already started seeing protesting in Memphis. I started seeing Black women, whether it's queer, whether it's trans, whether it's cis hetero Black women at the forefront of that. So can you speak to that, just as far as just this idea of protection and the toll it might take?
So protection, that's interesting. Because I feel myself not only going into protective mode for Tyre, but I told you like earlier about that natural reaction I had when protecting the officers who were clearly wrong, but it was kind of like a situation where like, okay, I can talk about my family, but you can't, right? From their perspective. Like, I think hearing people who were non-Black label these officers, these individuals who did this heinous act as like these thugs or whatever, that bothered me too. Like, so I instantly went into that like protective mode. So am I wrong for having this, I guess, natural reaction to want to protect both parties? Like, I don't know. It's giving weird,
No,
honestly. I don't like that feeling.
it's
It's
giving
giving
human.
weird.
It's giving human. When I saw him,
Human. Okay.
word.
I'll
When
say.
I saw him, it was like, damn, brothers. Like it wasn't y'all muff. It was damn. They got y'all.
Yeah.
And when I say they got y'all, not this idea of you killing Tyre and being brought up on charges, but the system, it got his claws into you. And you started acting like them. Where you couldn't see the humanity in another brother to try to intervene, you adopted that us versus them mentality. When actuality, if they and this is where we get into that whole idea of the importance of black teachers within the schools. If you saw yourself, they didn't see themselves in him. Right? They
No.
didn't see themselves in them. And maybe if that level, that goes back to what are you grounded in? What they're grounded in is they're grounded in police culture. They're grounded in unhealthy masculinity, which y'all call toxic masculinity, patriarchy, white. They're grounded in all of that and not grounded in blackness. Because even if you take that job as a police officer, how you show up is still going to be somewhat different. When I worked in child welfare as a police adjacent social worker, which was really the thing, I was still I was doing some harm reduction, right? I was still they might hit you with 10 arrows, but I'm getting hit with like 4 of them just to protect you a little bit. And they can't even say that because, again, what are they grounded in? Absolutely nothing. Paycheck, right? Because they probably get a healthy paycheck from all of this. The autonomy. I believe I read that they were part of the Scorpion unit, so they can run roughshod around the hood, and they just ran into somebody who I don't know, who pushed back. Somebody who pushed back.
The crazy thing is, like, going back to what you were saying about being immersed in their culture, right? So like immersed in police culture, which is essentially, rooted in white supremacy, of course. We talked about that earlier. Being immersed in that culture to the point where they almost like a delusion, like to the point where they actually believe they're accepted in that culture. Like, y'all actually think that they got y'all back. But even hearing about, the way they were talked about, right? So like the protocol was like they picking y'all apart, and y'all thought y'all was gonna get protected by these people. Yeah. And I think that as a people, there really has to come to a place to where we learn to socialize, like the racial socialization piece, which is very important, especially in childhood. We learn to immerse ourselves in our own culture in order to learn, what it means to be Black, what it means to see your brother, see your sister, and experience that racial empathy, right? To see myself in you, as opposed to, seeing this person through the lens of white supremacy. Because that's essentially what y'all did. Y'all automatically saw the brother and you criminalized him. That's literally a product of white supremacy. You saw him and you saw an unhinged Black man. That's a product of white supremacy, because he didn't even do anything. Even if he did do something, it wasn't means to respond in the heinous way that y'all did. So we really got to dismantle, a lot of these things that are reinforcing these reactions that these people are portraying.
Yeah, I mean, they all looked, and feel free if you want to hit the go live button. I got like 15% battery left, so I'm here for a little bit of time. Feel free to hit the go live button.
Why wouldn't you charge your phone? You knew that you wanted to go live.
It happens. I got a charger here. It's just a little. It's slow charges. That's all. It's slow charges. But it makes you think, like if they read George Jackson, if they read Mumia Abu Jamal, if they read Asada, if they read these these critical works at 13, 14, prior to getting into law enforcement, again, would that have changed anything? Like that's what I've been sitting and wondering a lot as we look here in Philadelphia with, even though I think how they portray gun violence makes it worse than it is. When we talk about per capita people, what have you, I often wonder if in these schools with these black and brown boys, if they were grounded in their history, not just the history of Dr. King, the people will roll out next month, but really immersed in it, where that became the focal point. What would that look like? What would that look like? And again, it's not again, I don't know who's responsible. It's definitely our responsibility as a community to educate our children, but
it is. Yeah.
Oh man, it's just, I want to curse. I do, because it's so frustrating, because the information is there, the knowledge is there, the people who have the desire to spread this information to hopefully, because this is going to happen again. These next five officers are right now in like 5th grade, right? Right now they're in pre-K. That's going to portray these animalistic behaviors towards black folk. And so if they're not, go ahead.
It's so crazy.
No, go ahead. No, you good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut. I was gonna say, like, it's crazy because even thinking about, like, us kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, whose responsibility is it? Should it be more immersed in like the family, or is it like the schools or whatever? And it's crazy because this whole thing is systemic. So like, even if okay, let's say the 5th graders right now, they grow up to be police officers or whatever. The way these kids in today's society, I was recently talking about this on a podcast, these kids in society or in these school systems are criminalized, right? So like when I was contracted with the DC public schools, you got metal detectors, this is what they're, and think about psychologically what that does to a black and brown kid. You're thinking like, okay, I'm a criminal, like I'm treated like a criminal, even when pursuing education. Like it's so embedded and deeply rooted in our culture. So when we think about ourselves as being criminalized and criminals, of course you're going to look at your brother or your sister and see them as criminals too. Like this whole thing is literally systemic, and that's why I feel like a lot of these systems we do have to abolish it. From the police department to the way we school our children to the way we rear at home, like all these things really play a role in the becoming of these types of officers. And it's just not the officers who's like this, because I'm pretty sure it's y'all got teachers who acting like this. They just don't have a gun or a taser to tase your children. Y'all got like it's a lot of black people like this. We just have to do a better job of dismantling these systems that have embedded these ideologies of white supremacy that causes us to see our brothers and sisters as criminals. Like the whole thing is whack.
Listen, I was not going to step on that. I was just going to let that cook, because you was rolling. This might be a first. I haven't seen you like this, or maybe it's been a while.
For real? I feel like I get like this on the podcast, not on live. I'm usually a lot more buttoned up on Instagram.
Yeah, and so what happens is interesting, and I promise you it relates. So I went on Twitter because I was hawking like the release of the video like it was an album, waiting for the store to open up, or waiting for some sneakers to drop at 10 o'clock on the sneakers. Exactly. I was sitting there waiting. And what I saw earlier was I saw Emmanuel Acho, who I critique often. He does the uncomfortable conversations with a black man, and Van Lathan, who formerly of TMZ and whatever other stuff he does. And make a long story less long, Emmanuel Acho was talking about the reason why he does it is because as a Nigerian man, he doesn't have the generational trauma that black Americans have in that regard, talking about chattel slavery, in reality, we know he's wrong. He's nonsense. And Van let him know about that. But one key point that he said was, he was like, it's this idea of like, you're the good, he called them, you're the emotional butler for white people. And it's like this type of othering. And this is what we see with these five brothers. I'm still gonna call them brothers because they still here. Because ultimately, if and when they get to see the light of day again, we're going to be the ones that have to embrace them when it's all said and done with. Because the police department that they're affiliated with, they're no longer there. And so they're going to have to come home to black folk. And I think that's something that's often missed in this situation. The same black folk that you perpetuated harm on for X amount of years during your time as an officer. But again, it's this idea of othering. I'm not them Negroes. I'm above them. That's why I can sit and talk about what went down. I can sit and talk about hit them in the same spot again with the baton. Yeah. But we also, and what was it, in the initial video, they had the white officer, he talked about, I hope they stomp him. I hope they stomp him. The white officer, after he ran away. And so what this means is, this isn't the first time that this has happened. Because a lot of times what happened is either the body camera's off, which at times it was fickling on and off, or they're doing it to the person who doesn't have the ability to go and file a police report. Why? Because they sell drugs. They in the game. So they can't snitch. So they just got to take the beating. And then just chalk it up as a loss.
For real, I'm hearing the concept of like elitism within our community, pertaining to these officers who thought that they were above other black people, because that's essentially what it is, right? So me feeling as though I'm above you, with like othering, therefore me targeting you or doing whatever it is that I want to do to you isn't going to be seen as like problematic or whatever. Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. No, take your time. No, it makes sense. It is this caste-esque type of system that, as a result of capitalism, as a result of, again, we keep saying the names Bell Hooks said it 1,000 times. So I don't know if I need to continuously say it, but this is what happens. It's the reason why the poor white folk could vote against their own interests by voting for Trump, just to spite black folk, right? To spite brown folk. It's the exact reason, because if we can put something in place where we can highlight some type of disparity, some type of difference, then we're going to do it. And so we do this with the money. You made it out. You graduated from high school. You don't have a criminal record. So you one of them ones. You made it out. Now you got the what? You could go be a cop now, as opposed to your peers. They didn't. And so again, this goes back from to what you're talking about in the school system and the educational system. Is there's a school to prison pipeline for a reason, right? Starting at what, 3rd grade, they're able to determine who's going to go to prison and who's going to potentially do something constructive, whatever that might look like with their life. Like we could see that early on, and we start to see the disparities in who's going to detention. We know it's black and brown boys who's getting expelled, suspended, black and brown boys and girls, most notably girls. Now, when I think about it, we talk about suspensions and expulsions. And so what this does is this what gets you the label. This gets you the diagnosis, potentially. Conduct this gets you your conduct disorder. Not that the white teacher is terrible. It has no classroom management skills, and the whole school looks like a prison. So aesthetically, it's Exactly.
like
Exactly. And it triggers you emotionally and psychologically, the dull, dim colors as you walk in, which impacts your mood and cause you to react in order to stay lively in some capacity, or having to sit still for 8 hours in a day, which we know isn't healthy. It isn't normal. It's not realistic. But if you can't do it, what? We're going to give you this medication. We're going to give you this diagnosis. We're going to put you in this emotional support class that is going to be easy for you to get into, but hard as hell for you to get out of. So you're going to take these remedial classes, quote unquote remedial classes, until you're like, hey, why the hell am I going to school with these remedial classes? I'm just not going to go. Now what options do I have? And so, yeah, when you put them up against them, it's just like, hey, I'm better than you because of this.
And it makes you even wonder, because, like I said, the police officers ain't the only ones who like think like this. Like it's just more I guess like at the forefront, because like they have guns and tasers and a bunch of other things that harm people. But like I'm even thinking about like doctors, like Black doctors, like people in healthcare, like, you know, people who work with other Black people who could actually be inflicting harm due to their own lack of progressing through like their racial identity.
I mean, we ain't gotta go no further. We ain't gotta say
like this. I promise you.
We ain't gotta say others. We could say you. We could say me. Like if we're honest, how many times have I walked past, and I don't do it any longer. I've walked past a Black homeless person and kept walking just because I didn't want them to ask me or not make eye contact with them, like they're less than human, right? How often do we do that? Somebody's standing there and they might have a cup at the light and they're like, you got some change, and we might automatically assume they're going to use it for no good, or we ignore them. We go into our phone instead of acknowledging their humanity and say, nah, I don't have it.
And it makes you wonder, where did that type of thinking come from?
I mean, we know where it comes from. We know where it comes from. Again, and it's not to say that all Black folk throughout history we've just been this amazing people to one another. No, we're human too, right? But this aspect of it, where there's no dignity, it's no humanity. It's easy to just have conversations about pulverizing somebody and talking about how your knee hurt as a result of it, looking for your flashlight while somebody's actively has brain swelling and not doing anything to take them to the hospital.
Yeah.
Again, feel free to hit the go live button if you feel so inclined, if you got thoughts. Again, we watched the video. We probably shouldn't have watched the video in hindsight, because it's just once you've seen one police murder, you've seen them all. Unfortunately.
But I think, I'm gonna call you out on that. That's problematic to even think though, because that reinforces that pattern of being desensitized to it.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm not sitting here saying it's not. I'm not sitting here saying it's not. You know, when I saw when we see what happened, gosh, it's such a list of people that we've seen things happen to. And I didn't watch the full George Floyd 8 minutes or whatever. I didn't want to watch it. Maybe it just caught me on a bad day, because clearly I was able to watch the 20 some odd minutes of this. Right. But no, it is. We are desensitized. It's the reason why we're able to do what we do. There's a level of desensitization that exists in order to be to be Black in any profession, but specifically professions like psychology, like mental health, like education, right? You got to ignore a whole lot of stuff, right? And if you're exposed to it long enough, you are going to be desensitized to it.
But that also, and I agree with you, I do, because I feel the same way when we talk about, like, unfortunately, suicide, right? So like when a person is talking about no longer being here, like especially when you work in inpatient hospitals or whatever, like that's the norm. Every client comes in most of the time with SI. When it comes to this, I feel like that desensitization piece, that just reinforces that side of, like, it dehumanizes us. Like, it dehumanizes us. It no longer allows us to be empathetic toward people who might be having that visceral reaction where they're, you know, overly anxious or you know, just experiencing all the signs and symptoms that we talk about related to race-based trauma. So I don't know. So, like, and how do we get resensitized?
And now that you say that, I don't know if I want to be desensitized, because I don't know what that means for my survival. I can, when I think, go ahead.
You don't want to be desensitized or resensitized?
I mean, I don't want any type of change in how I respond. I don't want to change how I respond. Looking at my little 5%. Don't yell at me. I don't want to change how I respond to traumatic situations at this point. Because I think if there's any change at this point, it could potentially mean my demise. And so I need to have a level of desensitization in order to exist in the world like I know it today. Not the utopia that I have in my mind. Does that make sense? Like the world I desire to see, I would love to be desensitized for that. But for what I'm at right now, no, I need to be able to take this information, hopefully process it in a healthy way the majority of the time, and then be able to continue on because of the work that's needed to be done.
Yeah, and Pastor Carl, feel free to join the conversation. To be desensitized to it, that's a result of trauma.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. And trauma survivors have that response, like becoming desensitized to things that remind them of the traumatic experience, because it's a form of like protecting yourself, right? It's your brain, your body's way of protecting itself. So you're saying for you, this idea of being desensitized to Black trauma is as a means to like protect yourself, but is it to protect yourself for you personally, or so that you can be of use to other people?
I mean, I think it's both. Number one, I have to be around. We have to be around in order to fight, right? Like the best, what does they say? The best availability. Something they say in sports about availability. You got to be available, right? To be able to participate in what's taking place. So for me, being desensitized and watching a video like this and cognitively recognizing that it's extremely problematic, devastating to not only myself, but to Black folk, but to humanity, but then not having a visceral response, emotional response where I'm anxious, where I'm nervous, is a healthy thing, dare I say, because it allows me to continue on, which again is the name of the game until I can get to a place where I got part of that Jay-Z millionaire acres in Nigeria, wherever he has it. I'm just able to live in the lap of luxury. But while I'm here, I need to maintain as much I need to be able to maintain my sanity by any means necessary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that is valid, and I hear you.
As long as it's not, that's what I was about to say. As long as it's not destructive, like where it can be, like me acknowledging that, yeah, I'm desensitized to watching this video. That's why I was able to watch it, recognizing that, making sure I'm not becoming desensitized in other areas of my life as well, right? To where I'm engaging with Black folk, where I'm able to have empathy and love, and for that, just because I'm not feeling that from watching this video, but I'm still able to have healthy emotions for Black folk. And I don't lose that to where I'm just numb to everything. I don't feel at all.
But that's the slippery slope of the effects of trauma, though. So, like, if we're comfortable with being desensitized to it, what happens with, like, systematic desensitization, right? It continues to happen. It's not just like a one-stop shop where you just automatically become desensitized and shut down. No, it's something that happens over a period of time. So eventually it could get to a place where, because we're so desensitized to the things that we might see on TV, the things we experience in real life, that it does turn off certain emotions and does impact our ability to be empathetic toward clients who are Black, toward our family members who might be experiencing racial stress. Like, you know, all those things can result from that.
So how do you push back against that then?
Personally, I feel as though, so I feel as though, I think being present and being aware and being sensitive to it is necessary, but it's also necessary to learn to know how to, like, process it and to work through it, as opposed to becoming desensitized to it as a means to, like, just wanting to do your job and to be effective with clientele. And that's why I asked you that question. Like, do you want to be desensitized for yourself or for others?
I was just going to say, I think for me, it's when, so moments like this, and don't get upset. I was in Uncle Bobby's today, right? And so, you know, I had some good laughs with some good folk for a good few hours, knowing what was coming down the pike, right? And so that's how I maintain my sense of sanity. I push back against the full-fledged desensitization, which would take place by me eliminating myself from these spaces to be able to experience joy, in all of these, in love, in all of these other emotions, right, and experiences. So I think it's just like, for this and knowing what I feel I'm tasked to do, leaning into this other space is that much more critical, because that's not going to, I've noticed, like, the joy that I experience is not going to change this desensitization to this type of shit, because I think I'm so hyper focused on it, and it's another emotion that comes up in the midst of it, that it's not going to ever change that. I don't know.
And first of all, don't be going to my spot without me, but I want to read this comment because he summed up exactly what I'm saying. So he said, Official Norwood said, I believe there's a way to stop, process, and feel what we feel and move forward without derailing your entire focus, right? The power of the dialectic. So I can process it and move forward with it. And I think what you're describing, the fact that you were intentional about kind of like processing, you knew that this was going to be a hard day. I think that, I mean, that proves it. This is something that.
Oh, no, it's not to say that it doesn't bother me, but I do know, I think what I'm speaking about is, I do think that there's for those who are in this work, this Black liberation work from the ancestors up until present day, there is a numbness that you have to have. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody to be on the front lines and challenging systems due to the effects of what can take place, right? Not to say they don't feel the effects of it, but you have to have a certain, it's like woeful ignorance to emotions in order to work towards the goal at hand. So, but with this, I'm just talking about, again, like visceral responses, like putting it on. I was expecting something to feel something different, and I didn't feel it, as opposed to.
But I think feel it. What I'm saying is, I think you didn't feel it as intensely as you expected because you had prepared for it.
Oh no, I don't think I could have. I don't think you could prepare for something like this, right? I felt this same way. Well, it's funny. I'm sorry. I felt this same way a few weeks ago. Like, it's a photo of me potentially floating out there with a picture with a black woman cop, right? And so she came into Uncle Bobby's. Yeah, no word. I was like, yo, this can't get out. I turned my head in the joint, but she came in. She was cool. She was young, and we was having a conversation, the people around me, and like I was taking inventory of how I was feeling. I was like, yo, I don't feel anything, which is weird when I typically see a cop, a white cop, a black male cop. That's when the anxiety starts to run rampant, right? But I didn't feel that at all. And so that's what I'm saying with this. I just didn't feel, right? And that's something I can't manufacture, right? I don't, and again, this could come from epigenetically speaking, everything that's happened in my family tree, environmental wise and nature wise, right? So, but that's what I was referencing. But no, I do. It's not about, I see the wearing the Superman cape and suppressing our body and mind's natural response to trauma can be problematic. It can, right? But I don't consider it a Superman cape, right? I don't think for me, it's how you view it, right? So I view like the Black liberation work. I view that as responsibility, right? And I don't view that as the same burden that I might view something else. I don't view it as a burden at all. So for me, I know what I need to do in order to help the people, and that may mean, for lack of a better word, suppressing at times for the greater good of community. It's not though, because it's not Superman. It's actually community. It's community cape. It's no different than what I feel for whatever I would need to do for my children, right? I don't view that as Superman, right? I view that as my duty, right? I view the work that I do, as long as it's not taking a substantial toll on me to where I can't recover.
So you've learned to pretty much compartmentalize the emotions, like how you feel in these certain situations, so that it doesn't impact.
But don't you have to? Aren't you doing that right now? You don't feel like you are?
I can't. I don't believe in like suppressing it. Like, or if I do, I want somebody to call me out on it so I can stop that. But I feel as though.
So maybe the language, maybe I'm not doing a better job of articulating it. So I guess in order to given the feelings that you felt, right? And I know this is cathartic, us having this conversation about it, that's helped you process. But I think also there was a part of you that after watching it, where it was just like, man, now I have to get on here, right? For the greater good of community, to be able to hopefully hold space for anybody that wanted to come on and have conversation about it. So it's not ignoring, but it's saying, because I'm sure you may have felt like not good enough potentially to not even come on.
Yeah, I had emotions. Definitely. I told you, like, my hands were
and
shaking.
Feel free to hit the join live, good brother Gabe. I would love to hear your thoughts on just everything that's taking place. We've gone all around the world having this conversation. Sorry to cut you off, Shay. Having this conversation about the aftermath of Tyre Nichols, and just how we're all navigating it. You being somebody who's active. We were just having a conversation about this idea of compartmentalizing. I was saying, like, part of me, I can't desensitize myself from, I don't want an aspect of me to be desensitized because I need to show up. I still need to show up in the way that I need to show up for the greater good of community. So we were just having this conversation, really trying to flesh out what we're doing. No, I completely agree. Somebody on the front line of activist work should have the space and freedom to cry, express as many times as necessary to rebound and keep running. No, I completely agree with that. But also there's moments where you might want to cry, but you can't, right?
I can't you though. That's the point that I'm driving. But look, that's the point where I'm driving. Because you brought up the point. You said you were feeling some type of way. You probably didn't feel like coming on. All of that is true, but I believe in the power of dialectics. I believe that two things can be true at the same time. I can be feeling emotion. I can be feeling angry. I can be feeling sad about the situation and also still show up for my community. I don't think that we have to choose to do one or the other.
But in this moment, you can't cry. I mean, you can cry in this moment, right? No. You can cry. No. In this moment, in this space, if you wanted to cry, you could, right? But there are certain moments where we do have to take inventory of our surroundings, what we're actively engaged in, and recognize in this moment, can I show up in this way, right? No matter if it's authentic or not. So I think about, and I'm anti-war, all of that. I think about that. Somebody out in war who's in the act of combat, it could be life or death. This idea of crying in that moment, right? And so I look at this as the same way. So right now, yeah, in the space, if I want to emote, if I want to cry, sure. But I know once I get to certain spaces where, yeah, I have to. Oh man, I almost used the super unhealthy, toxic slang. I'll say I can't. No, I don't want to say suppress, but I have to put that to the side for later. How does that work? Does that work better? I can't do it at 11. I can't do it at 11, but I'm gonna make space for myself to do it at 4. But I think we do that all the time in our daily work, right? The work that we do. If we really sat there in the moment and responded in a way that could be somehow counterproductive to what it is that we're doing, we're not gonna be able to do it. So afterwards, we might go decompress and practice self-care in a way that we need to. Because in that moment, when sis is telling you everything that transpired, if you break out in tears, that may be a healthy thing. It may be a positive thing for the therapeutic relationship, but also it could not be. And so you might have to save that for a bit later when you're talking to your therapist about this is what happened and processing it and letting out those tears that you couldn't earlier. Does that make sense? I'm trying to find my way. Word. Okay, y'all can feel free as what time is it? It's getting late. It's 9 o'clock. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. If y'all got thoughts, because clearly I can talk. So, but yeah, I don't know where do we go? Say it again.
It's a great point. I said no. These are great points.
Yeah, it's just. But these are all of the things that I talk about. So tomorrow, you heard me say, you tell my dissertation chair I'm not coming to residency. And what's interesting, being in academia, you've been in academia, right? I started this program right after the summer of George Floyd. Then Jacob Blake was shot and paralyzed like the first week of classes. We got Ahmaud Arbery, we got Breonna Taylor, we got all of these things that have taken place throughout the midst of my doctoral pursuit. And it's still that recognition, like tomorrow, like I got to show up because I'm one of 2 Negroes maybe out of 3 cohorts. And nobody really knows what we got to navigate to show up the way that we got to show up. All right. So I'm supposed to process this and take this and then go sit around white folk, well-meaning white folk, right? Some of them who I like very much.
And they'll probably check in on you. but it's like you alluded to, like the plight of being Black. Hey, Tim. The plight of being Black in America, right? So, like, we're expected to show up in different spaces, to remain professional, whatever that means, and to kind of just, like, keep life going in the midst of Black trauma.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's where, it's just like, where do we go from here? I think about that. Like, for me, I'm not going up tomorrow. I'm not going up. I'm not sitting around and having this conversation. Why? Because this secondary trauma is impacting me in some way that it might not be felt. So even though I say I'm desensitized, that doesn't mean that the intake of what transpired isn't manifesting and building up and won't come out at some point, right? And so then it's recognizing, and offering grace and allowing myself space to allow it to come out, hopefully in a healthy, adaptive way. Or it might be a Issa Rae tear the crib up type of moment, which is also okay. All right, but I think what's next in these spaces as we try to we talk about abolishing these different types of systems is really shifting how we showing up in these systems in the aftermath. I think that's one of the things that we really need is to have conversation on. What are your thoughts?
Which includes abolishing like the mental health system, which needs a lot of reconstruction. I think so. So what we're seeing here, and we alluded to this earlier, like what we're seeing here is definitely products of white supremacy, but even like the aftermath and how we're expected to move on and how we're expected to even like suppress and continue on our day by day, like that's also a product of white supremacy, right? Like enslaved Africans were not allowed to express emotion. They weren't allowed to feel. They weren't allowed to process. They had to continue on with like their day's work. And I think that's something that as Black people, like that's something that was passed down generationally.
Yeah.
So in terms of the
no,
yeah,
I'm just taking it in. Yeah, it's just like, what are we doing with these businesses that where we realize aren't they did their summer of George Floyd money donations and putting racism on the back of helmets. You might have got a Christmas bonus because you're a Negro, and we went through all the right. we got discounts. You might have had your white friends like cash app a Black person today. We did all of that, right? But now it's just like, how are we going to show up in these spaces? Are we showing up in a way where we can offer our skill, whatever it is, our skill, but not our entire selves? Like really focusing on that as we move forward, knowing that we're going to be we got to show up to spaces like work, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's something we're still trying to navigate and figure out. It's hard out here though.
Yeah, I mean, because it's and I think this is where the hyper focus on one. It's the entirety of it all that does us so much damage, right? And it's just what are we grounded in? What are we going to become rooted in? So where we're not centering them, because even like this type of situation, it centers them, right? It centers their brutality as an institution, as a people. And so that means bringing in I saw some videos of Tyre, just his photography and just the things that he enjoyed doing. And this is where we start to center ourselves in the midst of this, right? We start looking at things with the old Sonia Sanchez adage of how does it free us, right? And not engaging in things that don't necessarily free us in any capacity or doesn't lend to our well-being in any capacity. So, yeah. Y'all, I know some stragglers out here. Y'all could have hit that button because I'm getting sick of me talking.
I ain't talking.
No, but I got the raps. You talk more than me. So, I don't necessarily have the opportunities. My pod just came back, so I'm trying to find my voice, rhetorically speaking, on YouTube at Phil MSW, right? I'm just trying to find my voice, trying to get used to it again, right? So I'm not necessarily having conversations with folk on a regular basis. This is probably why. But even that's interesting, where, I say the HBCU experience is a labor of love to be there. Yeah, I teach on Tuesday, and again, this talks about the myriad of traumas that Black folk have to experience. So I teach synchronously on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9:30 to 10:45. Last week at the school, at class, I had some people email me like they're not going to be there, they're not going to come out for whatever reason, and I was like, all right, cool. One sister, she didn't explain it. And so I gave her an excuse. I'm like, listen, she's on some committee. I'm like, well, listen, I gave you an excuse for this one. You done missed the first week of class, right? I can't do nothing about this second one. And so after this one class, sister, she was like, yo, you heard about Dell State? I was like, wait, what happened? She was like, she said it was all on the shade room, and I went on there, but I didn't see it. She was like, they're protesting because of sexual assaults that have taken place on campus. And so I did my research on it because I was aware sexual assaults had been taking place because they'll call you, they'll send you the text, and you'll get the email. Nothing from administration, of course. Um, but the students had protested. They 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 were protesting the leadership, the lack of accountability. The most recent sexual assault was about 2 weeks ago on a Sunday early morning. And come to find out, I believe there are seven sexual assaults. There have been seven sexual assaults on Dell State's campus since August 2022, and they're all still pending. Right? And so the students are outraged as they should be. And so they went around, they protested, and I'm proud of them. They get in, they're speaking to the police. The police are laughing in their faces, right? And this video was circulating on social medias. Other campuses got involved with the protesting. And so on Tuesday, we had to go away from syllabus content, which I'm here for. I don't give a fuck about it anyway. To have a conversation about the sexual assaults that's taking place on campus, the protest. I didn't receive anything from people within the department discussing the protest, right? And I'm in the social work department, but this goes to show you how HBCUs are white-facing institutions, right? They might be Black in name and Black in personnel, but they have white aspirations, much like these five white officers who clearly they had this desire to ignore self again, but they have no knowledge of self. And so we sat and had those conversations. And I'm in a room. I'm first to put you. The social work profession is primarily women, right? It's dominated by white women, but a lot of Black women. And so in my class, we have 13 out of 15 students are Black women. Yet we haven't heard anything from administration. And so making space for that to take place, to verbally admonish administration if need be. And the same thing is going to have to take place in the classroom on Tuesday. We're going to have a conversation about that, about what's taking place. But again, everything that one has to carry in order to show up, to get an education, and just to live, to be Black folk, for Black folk is it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It was on
Yeah,
the shade room. I didn't see it on the shade room.
I checked the shade room. I didn't see it there, but I saw it a lot on Twitter. I saw some protest on Instagram, but yeah, it was, it's for me, it's what's to be expected of all of these institutions. In my eyes, they're all the same. It's literally no different. Oppression, marginalization, and brutalization in some capacity, whether it's psychologically, emotionally, or physically, spiritually, or all of the above, like in Tyre Nichols' case.
That's crazy. I got to do more research on that. I haven't
Yeah,
heard too much
yeah.
on it.
But that goes to show you too, right? Like we see what's happening in society to Black folk, but it takes this to really galvanize some folk. And be honest, even when I saw the video and I went to go check my timeline wasn't jumping about this, right? It wasn't, and that's why the beauty of, I don't want to say the beauty and timing of the George Floyd death was the fact that we were in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Because other than that, that
People
could have something
have,
else.
yeah.
It could have been an entirely different turnout with that same footage, with that same turnout. So yeah, man.
Listen, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Wait, I thought I saw something. I don't want to leave. I think a lot of the path forward looks like tight-knit supportive communities that educate, provide resources, and help move the positions of power. It's not a new thought, but the execution is scattered, fragmented. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, like none of this is new, right? I think that's the most interesting part. Go when you go watch. I'm trying to think. What documentary did I watch? This was some years ago. There was a 5, 6 part OJ documentary on ESPN. It was done really well, and they went to the Watts riots. They went to so many different um points, tipping points in the black community when it came like just to police. And this continues, right? Like this continues. This is nothing new. The strategies that we've discussed are nothing new, and that's why I sit and think about the more knowledge of self that I have, the more grounded I become, it's like, okay, now what more can I do? Right? What more can I do? I got the foundation now. Now I can start adding a little bit more to my plate.
But I think, and this goes back to, and I know
Yeah, I'm
we're
sleepy
wrapping up
too.
because I'm getting tired, but that goes back to that goes back to your point of like, okay, what more should I be doing? More should I be doing more? And I think we gotta show ourselves like grace when it comes to stuff like that, because I think you're doing a lot, right? So like you're getting a whole doctorate degree. That in itself is a tool for liberation for our people, right? That is activism, pursuing education. How is
I mean,
education not
I don't think it
activism?
had to be a doctorate though. Education is a form of activism for sure, but
Right.
um that's an interesting question. I'll let you close out by responding to that question from Penny English 317. Yeah, I think just the idea of education is activism, right? Not necessarily this this mechanism of academia, this format. I don't think so. Because
Mm-hmm.
I probably learned more. Like this is my fourth degree. I've probably learned more in the last 2 years from non-academic outlets than from academia. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's for me. I just look at it as it's like I'm still Phil. And so that's how my students address me at the end of emails. I put Phil, right? Because that's just being true to who I am and just being authentic to myself. Now, wife, I don't know, it might be something different. You know what I mean? Like you gonna call me doctor, but no, it is. It's definitely a tool of activism. Just like
Yeah.
being a therapist, speaking truth to power, no matter whatever space you might inhabit, right? This is a form. It's new age, right? It's new. I think we're still trying to understand it and figure it out
Yeah.
how we can leverage it more towards community and actual liberation of people as opposed to how so many of us, including myself at times, um, have leveraged it. But again, that comes with time, that comes with wisdom, that comes with maturity. So
That's I stopped scrolling in January along with what else I was doing. But in order to like regain that focus and to reevaluate
yeah,
the
yeah.
purpose of social media.
So as we wrap up,
Um,
the question was, how do you process rage? And I'll let you in with that because that's
mm,
heavy.
no, that's real heavy. Um, I mean, first we gotta acknowledge the fact that is normalize it, right? Like that. I think that is normal for Black people, especially to experience that when we are. Oh, they protesting in
Oh yeah.
DC right now. hmm So when we are experiencing things like that, especially when we see it happen to people who look like us, so it's certainly normal. With rage, which is an intense emotion, like of course there are going to be physiological reactions to that, right? So how we know to respond to physiological reactions to emotion is to activate the body's the what is that thing called? I talk about it all the time. The relaxation system. You know it.
My brain is a little fried right now.
Mine too, because I'm tired. All right, whatever. Y'all know the body has a relaxation system, and it's called something. It's hyper something. But I promise you, I'm going to know it by Monday when I turn my brain back on. So we do that by engaging in things like deep breathing, exercise, like things that basically relaxes you, right? So thank you,
yes,
parasympathetic nervous system. I appreciate
that's why we're here.
Therapy. Girl, you done saved my life. Yes, parasympathetic nervous system. So when we activate those different systems in the body, that activates the body's relaxation system, and also learning to talk about it. Like, it's absolutely okay to like talk about it with our friends, our relatives, or whatever. Like Phil just gave an example of how he was at a coffee shop today talking and just creating joy with friends or whatever. So like learning how to verbally process these things is important as well.
Yeah, and I'll say, and being out there, right? You just said they're protesting in DC. Sometimes taking that rage looks like going out and screaming to the top of your lungs, no justice, no peace, right? And being out there on the front lines in the midst of it all. And that's a way to also process in a healthy way, you know, a way that's not maladaptive, that won't cause you potential strife, right? In the long run, it's another way to navigate that. But again, honoring it, as Doc said, honoring it and recognize it as being real, recognizing the origins of it is vital, right? Is critical. Mm-hmm. So, word, man, we win. I wasn't. Thank you for. Can I tell people you broke your fast for this? And that I had the guilt trip you into coming on. It's
well, technically I'm done at midnight.
Yeah, no, but I as I said, I think this is part of it, right? Like, I don't believe in coincidences. Like, your last day is today, and we have this taking place, right? It was just like, it's the old adage of, you know, if you pray for patience, you're not going to be given patience. You're going to be given experiences where you have to exhibit patience, right? And so it might have been building you up for this 2-hour run with your boy. So it's been long, man. I think that it dropped at like, it's like an hour and some change. Yeah, I'll try to do what I can to doctor it up. And try. I'll save it to my joint and see what I can do.
I appreciate it.
Well, everybody, I appreciate y'all coming through. Thank you, Doc, for coming and having this conversation. Don't forget to follow me. Just hit the follow button. I don't know how you do that on this joint, but go ahead and follow me. And likewise, follow Doc. And what you got coming up?
What do I have coming up? Black History Month is coming up, so I'll be talking about that.
What you gonna be doing for that
podcast? Just different guests and stuff, and talking about history. Why are you trying to come on?
What you gonna come on? We're gonna do a double show. I need somebody, and feel free if you want Doc. Peace, brother. Come through next Thursday. I'm gonna be showing the documentary on Zora Neale Hurston that PBS showed. So I'm gonna live stream that on my YouTube and Facebook channels. So Phil MSW, and then we're gonna have a talk back around like 7:00 on the documentary. And again, it goes to this and how we navigate these spaces that we frequent. So, but yeah, I'll come on. We could have that conversation, or we could do it officially, like one and one. I thought that said Keke Palmer. I was about to say, damn, you really are famous. You know what I mean? I was about to say, how's the baby, Keke? Sending love and light. To you, my sister. Word.
Palmer is hilarious to me.
Word.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
Wow, hit the.
All right, Phil.
All
Hit
right,
me up.
everybody, be safe.